Hello and welcome to Dugout Debrief. I'm your host, Chris DeLuca. This is Boom Broadcasting's one first and only baseball-centric podcast, and we are once again back after a week-long hiatus. I skipped a week, and you know what that means? We're going to have a lot more to cover here in the news. There's been a lot more that has happened. There's been a lot of signings. Of course, the last major piece in the free agency market was taken off the board. The last Boras guy, they really like to wait, as we all know. We learned that a few years ago when Manny Machado and Bryce Harper were on the market. And this year they're a little bit earlier, that office, but one guy decided to go and hang on for quite some time. But overall, spring has sprung, spring training has started. We're going to be talking a little bit about that. I'll be totally honest with you. We're not going to talk about it a whole lot. This is more of a news show. We're going to talk a little bit of college baseball, and we'll do the aforementioned spring training discussion. But right now, this is going to be more of a general type show as opposed to the ones we've been doing pretty much the entire offseason, which I'm actually proud of that the divisional coverage, going by division, covering every single team rather, was took up the entire offseason. So with that being said, it's time for the news, and we're going to go start with the last major piece, the aforementioned last major piece off the free agency market. Alex Bregman, the former Astros third baseman, signs with the Boston Red Sox in a 3-year, $123 million contract. The man finally gets paid, probably not as much as a lot of us thought he did or would get. But the Red Sox want to keep up. I mean, the Yankees are continuing to try and build after losing Juan Soto. You can never forget about those Tampa Bay Rays as well. And Toronto still has a lot of talent, despite the fact that they really can't get out of their own way. And Baltimore is still going to be Baltimore. I still think that they can win that division quite easily, even though they didn't really add very much in the free agency market. We've talked about them before, but Bregman, third baseman, obviously Boston already has a pretty darn good third baseman, Rafael Devers. They were interviewing Rafi Devers, and they asked him if he's willing to move off of third base, and he said third base is his position. So as of right now, it looks like they're going to be moving Alex Bregman over to second base, which he's played before. I believe he played there a little bit when Altuve was dealing with some injuries. And speaking of Altuve, they're moving him to left field potentially, is something I heard about as well. So I'm not really sure why they would do that at his age. You think you would want to move someone into the infield because there's less damage on your body. But what do I know? What is Houston doing anyway? We don't really know what Houston's doing right now. They're kind of an interesting direction. But going back to the Red Sox, I think that this is a great signing. I think that they're just trying to improve based on everyone else around them. They're trying to compete, and I definitely think that they can go and get an American League wildcard spot with how top-heavy the American League is. It's a really tough division, but they play their division quite well, even when they're not very good. They still play New York well. They kind of struggle with the Orioles, but moving on to a former Red Sox and a guy that I was really, really big on. I mentioned this in a few previous shows when we were doing divisional breakdowns, that pretty much just assumed that all 30 teams should be trying to pick this guy up, and it's Nick Pivetta. He signs the San Diego Padres on a massive 4-year, $55 million deal, and I think it's a huge steal. I mean, some were calling it an overpay, but I think it was a great move to sign Nick Pivetta by San Diego. That's going to be a really good rotation. He was mid-fours in the ERA, but he can paint the corners really well with his four-seamer and his sweeper. His sweeper's really, really good. And he was top 7 in strikeout percentage, the top 7 percentile back in 2023 as well. He's had a little bit of struggles, but I think this guy is going to be a really, really good pitcher. He was a great back-end guy for the Boston Red Sox, and I think he's going to be a great mid to back end guy with San Diego. I mean, because that's going to be a really good rotation. Cease, Musgrove, Yu Darvish, and now Nick Pivetta. So I think San Diego still got a really, really good rotation, and that Pivetta signing was really good. Next, the Twins signed Ty France to a 1-year, $1 million contract. The power-hitting infielder hit 13 home runs between Seattle and Cincinnati last year. He was an all-star in 2022, and I think it's a good signing. I always felt like if he could limit his strikeouts, he could be a really, really good power hitter. Obviously, he's had some strikeout struggles, but I mean, this guy could easily hit 30, 40 home runs if he could just limit the strikeouts, stop being like Joey Gallo, which will be he's on the docket too in this show. So The Angels signed Yohan Moncada to a 1-year, $5 million deal, and the veteran was the last member of those playoff White Sox teams. He was a sign of hope back in 2019. He's been consistent with the power numbers, but his health tanked in 2024. I think he only played maybe 14, 20 games, something like that. And yeah, it's really weird because I remember how big everybody was on Yohan Moncada for a long time, how big the White Sox were on him. And he just kind of hung out because, as we know, the White Sox kind of obviously the wheels just completely fell off for them. I mean, they were a playoff team 2020, 2019, 2021 playoff team. And just the wheels completely fell off. Worst team in MLB history in 2024, which is just insane how quickly that changed. But that's what happens when you don't retain players, you don't develop well. And, again, this isn't about the White Sox, but it's interesting to me because the Angels have really gone out and try and sign these veterans to low risk, high reward deals. I see they have a form of a strategy, but I don't think anything's going to change until Artie Moreno is out the door there. I think he's similar to Jerry Reinsdorf, aforementioned White Sox, in the sense that he doesn't really look at modern analytics at all. And it's okay to go and look at that gut feeling as opposed to modern analytics. There's nothing really wrong with that, but you have to find a happy medium. You can't just say stick on one boat or the other, because if you completely put all your eggs in one of those baskets, it's not going to go well. And teams that kind of split that, say 70 analytics, 30 gut feeling, are the teams that are doing well. It's teams like the Dodgers, it's teams like the Yankees, teams like the Padres, and Texas Rangers as well, another great example. So yeah, Angels signed Yohan Moncada. I kind of see what they're doing. I think they're going to improve a little bit, but not a huge amount. There are a couple people I would have rather them kind of go after, but they need to go for prospects is what they need to go for. And when I say I kind of see what they're doing, I'm more referring to the fact that if you get all of these sort of aging veterans, one of them is bound to have a good year, and then you're going to have some fringe team that will go and throw a solid trade for you, because I think the Angels have the second worst farm system, if not the worst farm system in baseball right now. And that's really bad considering you're coming off your worst season in MLB history, your worst year in MLB history. So, or your worst year in franchise history, rather. So, yeah, I think that's what they're doing. But, again, who knows? It's kind of hard to tell with them. Speaking of veterans, Dodgers signed Eddie Rosario to a 1-year, $74K contract. I believe it's a minor league deal. The veteran, another veteran off the board. And I hope it's similar to Jason Hayward or JD Martinez, what he did for the Dodgers, where it's a good locker room guy. It's a guy who's clutch. It's a guy who can be a leader and overall just improve the vibe in the locker room. Dodgers got plenty of those guys. He's been declining since 2020, but hopefully he can bounce back, go down to Oklahoma City, which are now the Comets, by the way. I want to get one of their hats. I think their hats are pretty cool. Them and even though I'm not an Astros fan, obviously, a Sugarland Space Cowboys hat are both on the docket for the next hat purchases. Another deal, Tommy Pham signs with the Pittsburgh Pirates on a 1-year, $4.25 million deal. The power hitting hothead has played for 3 teams in 2024, and that was the Royals, Cardinals, and White Sox. I feel like this guy's played for half the league, and I want to say he's played for 12 to 10 teams. I think it's 10 teams he's played for. I counted it not too long ago. So, the guys bring spark to the locker room, good and bad. But let's just hope that he doesn't play Brian Reynolds in fantasy football, because that could turn into a boxing match, if you know, you know. So speaking of fighters, Trey Mancini signs with the Arizona Diamondbacks. The feel-good story, signs a minor league deal, and he continues his career. I've really been big on this guy. I loved his run in the home run derby a few years back. And I'm just hoping that he can, be a replacement for Christian Walker, put up a fight with Josh Naylor for that starting first baseman position, maybe be a DH. Just make the league again. I would love to see him. I'd love to see him play again in the major leagues. I mean, he was with Houston for a while. And again, he's a feel-good story with all that he dealt with, battling cancer, coming back, and having that run in the home run derby. It was just a really good story, and I hope that he can continue that story. So another former Oriole as well is off the board. John Means signs with the Cleveland Guardians on a 1-year, $1 million contract. I'll never forget his no-hitter back in May of 2021. I remember that was like a random middle of the day matchup. And I was happening to watch it in between classes. And I was even late for a class, I believe, because of that, because I was watching that. And it should have been a perfect game if not for that drop third strike on the first play of the game, or the first at bat of the game. He's been recovering from Tommy John surgery for about 2 years now. He struggled with injuries since 2022, but if he can bounce back, he can be as elite as he was in 2021. I mean, don't forget, he threw the aforementioned no-hitter, and he finished second Rookie of the Year voting. I mean, he had my vote that year. The Mountaineer had a solid 4 starts that he did have in 2024. He only got 4 in. He had 2.61 ERA, 16 strikeouts, and I really hope he can bounce back. I mean, obviously I'm biased. He's WVU guy, and he was really good when he was here. Him and Alec Manoah were together in those, the other time that we were close to going to Omaha back in 2019. And I hope that he can just repeat that, go back to what he was in college, go back to what he was in 2021. Because, hey, if he could stay healthy and repeat his past, he could be a Cy Young candidate easily. I really wish that Baltimore would have given him another shot, especially because that Orioles rotation still needs help with how good the division is around them. But Cleveland, I think it's a good fit for him in Cleveland. It's going to add a lot for them. So there's been a decent amount of notable signings. I'm just going to kind of go over. Cal Quantrill signs with the Miami Marlins, former Guardian right there. The White Sox signed Michael A. Taylor and Joey Gallo, who I saw get a golden sombrero back in like 2018 at Fenway Park. Joey Gallo limiting the strikeouts, not something he can do. He is the definition of an all or nothing hitter. And now he's on the White Sox, which is never a good recipe to improve. The Astros signed Luis Guillemore. I can never pronounce his name. The Orioles signed Daz Cameron. The Guardians signed Jacob Junis. The Nationals signed former Cardinal Paul DeJong. The Rangers signed former Braves reliever Luke Jackson. Padres signed Tim LaCastro, who is one of the most interesting players when it comes to analytics. I recommend just looking into him because he is pretty much a designated runner, which is nothing you really expect to see in 2025. The Rockies signed Scott Alexander, the former Dodgers reliever. The A's signed another former Dodgers reliever, Dylan Floro. The Mariners signed Rowdy Tellez. Andrew Chafin signed a minor league deal with the Detroit Tigers. Andrew Heaney signs with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and former Dodgers third baseman Justin Turner signs with Toronto Blue Jays. I'm wishing the best for Justin Turner. I really miss seeing him in blue and white, and it feels really weird to see him in another uniform. It still does, but he's going to another blue and white north of the border, so we wish him luck. So spring training. Spring has sprung. All 30 teams are playing, and I'm just really excited. It's a good time to just turn it on as background noise. I never really let spring training be a judge necessarily of what's going on or how teams are going to be, because this is more of the time just to get guys playing time. It's more a time to get your rookies to come up or your younger guys to come up. Anyone who's on the 40-man, just give them a chance. It's some time to kind of get people back into the stride of playing in the regular season. Because again, as I always say, baseball, the MLB season, it is a marathon. It is not a sprint, and you need a lot of warm up. Some people have said they should limit spring training more, have less games, and I have to disagree with baseball because I take football as an example of this. The 2020 season, I have 2 examples of why spring training should remain at the same length that it is, roughly the month and a half that it is if you look at the NFL, when they cut off the third week of the preseason, and they did this to limit injuries, it ended up causing a decent amount of injuries because a lot of these guys just weren't in shape enough. I mean, yeah, they have OTAs, they have all of that starts in the late summer, but these guys still just aren't 100%. If they've had a nagging injury that they got over the summer, they've had time to really be in and work that out with team doctors. So I almost think that it balances itself out when it comes to injuries. And then also, if you look at the 2020 season, I mean, quality of play in 2020 was not good because there was no spring training. I mean, COVID hit in May, and then that was pretty much it. They didn't even get to play until I think it was last week of July, first week of August. So the roughly 2.5 month season, it was challenging. It was challenging for everybody. And you saw a lot of injuries. You saw a lot of poor quality of play, saw a lot of mental errors. And yeah, going just kind of delving into the next topic in a sense with college baseball, that's why you see these teams from the Northeast really not play that great because they don't get to practice at all. So they're not in mid-season form until the mid-season. So keep spring training at the same length it's at. Again, I don't have a lot of overall takes on the quality of spring training, the quality of how people are playing, because it's more just kind of an organized practice, and that's good. Opening day is March 19th between the Dodgers and the Cubs. That will be the Tokyo series, and I'm really excited for that, giving more exposure overseas to these guys, just expanding the market internationally. Baseball has really become a lot more of an international market than a lot of people expect. I mean, obviously soccer, I'm actually wearing an Italian national team jersey right now, just having to speak. Obviously soccer is the game that unites the entire world. Every single country pretty much has a national team. But baseball is getting pretty darn close when it comes to international exposure in some senses. I wouldn't say that close to soccer level, but I'd say it's around basketball level. So I take that back. But yeah, I mean, you have Team Japan won the World Baseball Classic. Korea really likes baseball. Chinese Taipei just qualified for the World Baseball Classic. And then there's all of the island countries, Central American countries, and even a few South American countries like Venezuela are really, really into baseball. And I think that's great for the game. It could expand the market. I really hope that it could expand into Europe. I mean, Team Italy was managed by Mike Piazza in the last World Baseball Classic, so I was rooting for them as well. So yeah, and then it opens in North America on the 27th. So 10 days later in North America, it will open. Every single team but the Rockies will be playing on opening day, which it's still so weird to think that not every team is playing on opening day. It's the same thing that not every team played on 4th of July. Like some teams had an off day on 4th of July. It's one of those things that just doesn't make sense. Everybody should be playing on opening day. Everybody should be playing 4th of July. That's just my little general take on that. Moving on to college baseball, and we're going to be wrapping up here because we're just kind of doing a general news show today. Nothing crazy, nothing really that insane. I'm thinking that next week we're going to start doing some off-season breakdowns, maybe just kind of ranking some off-season moves, kind of doing more predictions, that kind of stuff. We're just kind of going general discussion here. And then soon we're going to be talking about the week. I'm just really excited for opening day because there's going to be a lot to talk about once that happens. But yeah, getting into college baseball, we have the first updated rankings of the year. We're about 8 games into the year here. Texas A&M is at number 1, LSU at number 2, Tennessee at number 3, Arkansas at number 4. The Vance Honeycutt-less Carolina Tar Heels are at 5. Georgia is at 6. FSU at 7, and then Florida at 8. Oregon State at 9, the former national champions, and another former national champion, UVA, rounds it out at 10. And Perfect Game, which is another ranking system similar to college football. There's a there's an AP, and then there's others like college football has the coaches, the media, and AP. Perfect Game has WV at 21, and NCBWA has them at 22. So WVU off to a really, really good start. Has started 7-0 with wins over the Ohio Bobcats, Jacksonville, and Lipscomb. So I'm really excited for them to play Queens. Then after Queens, they will have their home opener February 26th against Ohio. And then, they go down to the Charlotte area. They play a few games in Kannapolis, and then they play a game in Charlotte against Queens University. The Big 12 opener will be March 14th through 16th in Stillwater, facing the Oklahoma State Cowboys at O'Brate Stadium, which is a very, very pretty ballpark in Stillwater, Oklahoma. It's just a pretty campus in general. I recommend, if you're able to go try and catch either a football or baseball game. I've had the opportunity to catch a football game there. And Gallup is really good too. I want to see all three sports. They have Oklahoma State, just such a cool campus, such an underrated campus. And sports culture there too. They're really, really into it there. And anyone who tries to tell you that they're a little brother to OU, well, they can take a hike. So we're going to be moving on to our trivia question here of the week. 2 weeks ago now. Who is the only player to have their number retired in all baseball? What is that number? It is 42. It is Jackie Robinson. Pretty simple right there. And, there's been a lot of arguments about, so-and-so, somebody, Derek Jeter, whoever, all these people should have their number retired in all of baseball. And I have to disagree with that, because you're getting into like the ranking talent. And that is something that has always been problematic for a lot of reasons. One, because everybody has their own opinions. Two, time periods differ. I've talked about this in multitudes of on different shows here about how you can't really compare someone from one era to another. Just taking the example of the great players from the 1990s and early 2000s. I don't think that Barry Bonds would be as good facing today's pitching. I don't think that anybody from the golden era of baseball, 1920s, 1930s, would be able to even touch a Paul Skeens fastball. It's not anything. I'm not saying that they're bad. I just don't think that there's any comparison. So when you get into the debate of wanting to retire a number across all of baseball, well, that's talent-based. It's totally talent-based. Jackie Robinson was incredibly talented. He was one of the best players of his era, but he also broke the color barrier. He was very culturally influential. And I think that's the reason why you should retire it, because it's less based on his talent and more what he did for the game, what he did for social justice, what he did for American culture, the legendary culture that he created and the legacy that he left behind. That's more the reason why his number is retired. But again, that side tangent is what it is. I just think that if you're going to have your number retired, it should be more based on what you do. So the only one that I could maybe say could be retired by every single team would be a guy like Roberto Clemente for his humanitarian work. And he was incredible. Roberto Clemente is one of the best, if not the best, Pittsburgh Pirate ever. And so he also was a great humanitarian. So we're about to wrap it up here. Which famous hothead? I feel like I've said that here a few times. It's been the second time I've said that, not something I've expected. Which famous hothead was nicknamed Big Z? Which famous baseball hothead was nicknamed Big Z? We're going to have the answer to that next week. We're going to have a lot to talk about next week as well. Let's hope there's a little bit more signings, gives me some more stuff to talk about. And again, if you want me to discuss anything, I gladly will, because this is the best up-and-coming sports YouTube channel. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on everything right now. And I just want you guys to really appreciate every single person who grinds on here. Quick Hits with Shannon, you got to make sure you're watching that. You got 3 from Deep with Jason. He's talking the NBA. That's really heating up. Trade deadline went by, and you got the playoffs coming up soon. And then, of course, the Gridiron Address, which I've unfortunately not been able to be on for a little bit due to some scheduling. They're still going. He's pulling. Aaron's got that grind that he's got to be pulling right now, where it's during the off season. He's got guests coming on. He had Michael, he had Jason, he had Shannon on here recently. So just make sure you're watching all that, supporting these guys, because this is a fantastic channel with fantastic information and a bunch of really good creators. Make sure to tune into all that. Make sure to tune to Out of Pocket too, because they had a really good show on the UNC's decision to extend Hubert Davis, which mixed feelings on. I wish I could have been on there, but I just couldn't, because I have some things I want to say. But this is not a basketball show, although I do love college basketball and I love baseball. So with that being said, this has been Dugout Debrief. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.